Hey everyone, and thank you all so much for tuning in. Today we're going to do something a little different. Nick is going to facilitate this chat with former World Tour pro and accomplished gravel racer Ted King. So they talk about the horrific wildfires that erupted last month in Oklahoma just before the 2025 Mid-South gravel race in Stillwater, which was canceled as a result. To help raise money for those impacted, Ted decided to hit that 300-mile Mega Mid South course solo with an eye on setting the new fastest known time in the process. So Nick and Ted cover all of that, plus bike packing, the tour divide, snacking, and a whole lot more. Let's get into it. So before we dive into the interview, I do want to take a quick moment to let you all know this video is supported in part by Surly Bikes. Surly, they make serious steel bikes for people that don't take themselves too seriously. They make bikes that are versatile and durable that can be dressed up or down for commuting, bike packing, ATVing, gravel grinding, or really whatever you call fun on two wheels. With 15 original dirt-friendly platforms, they offer something that fits just about anyone for any style of riding. So for more about Surly, make sure to hit the card in the top right corner here, or else find the link in the description below. All right. Let's dive into the chat.
First of all, my name is Nick Morales. I'm an editor here at BIKEPACKING.com. This is Ted King, a man of many accomplishments, chief of which, and most recent of which, he is the FKT holder for about a grand total of, 45 minutes?
Yeah, I think a little shy of that even. I was saying 30,
wow.
and I realized I had it for about 40 minutes.
Man, okay. Well, nonetheless, you're a man that needs no introduction in the cycling world. But yeah, let's set the stage. Let's talk a little bit about the context going into this. So Mid-South, for the uninitiated, I'm sure everybody that's listening is aware of what it is, but generally speaking, it is a gravel event that takes place in March. It has become one of the biggest gravel events in the world, I would say. It's sort of the spiritual kickoff to the gravel racing season, if I'm not mistaken. That being said, it doesn't exist as part of the Lifetime Grand Prix, which, according to Bobby, it never will. And it serves as a space, I think, for a number of different people across the bike space to share. So people like yourself that are professional racers, people like myself that like to go fast, but not necessarily do so in a competitive fashion. And then also, sort of as an industry gathering point at the beginning of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So you headed into Mid-South 2025, having gone a fair few times yourself, but you headed in with a little bit of a different plan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is the season kickoff for all intents and purposes for sort of a nationwide draw. I mean, obviously, if you live in warmer climates, you've probably had a couple of gravel races by this time of the season, but it really is just this early season mecca. And it was going to be my first race of the year. Yeah, I mean, we can at that point take the story in two diversions. The first being the plan was to race. The plan was to be at the Expo on Thursday and Friday and race on Saturday. And then I was going to take part in, I hadn't really publicized it because for a variety of reasons, a chief of which is the weather can be crazy. And if the mud and rains hit, then it's not even worth going for a bike ride, let alone pursuing an FKT.
Yeah.
And but then the follow-up to that is it was dry as a bone, which is part of the issue because then there were wild winds on Friday, which quickly blew a wildfire out of control, literally. And so ultimately, Saturday's Mid-South was canceled.
Right. So before we get into that, you because I was unclear on this, you intended to ride the Mid-South 100, which, again, if people don't know, the Mid-South started as the land run back, I don't know, maybe a decade ago at this point, or over a decade ago at this point. But it has always been a 100-mile gravel race, or that has been the primary event. They have smaller distances. Bobby has added now a marathon or a running component that takes place on the Friday.
And that actually precedes, my understanding is the run precedes the bike ride.
Oh, wow. Okay. I
believe that's the case.
Okay.
But so yeah, it's a whole weekend affair for sure.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, candidly, or not necessarily candidly, but sort of tongue in cheek, Bobby uses the event to also obviously bring people to his beloved Oklahoma, but also to throw on a music festival, which he's very, very passionate about, and get people to witness him play the guitar, which is lovely. But aside from that, because this is something I was unclear on, you intended to do the actual Mid-South 100 and not just like ride off into the distance onto the Mega Mid South, which we'll get onto in a second. But you intended to do the Mid-South 100.
Yeah. So one minor step back.
Okay.
Last fall, I believe, was when they introduced the Mega Mid South.
Yeah, I did the inaugural Grand Depart.
Oh,
and I
very
wrote
nice.
Yeah, I wrote about it for our site, and I was
Cool.
at the inaugural Grand Depart, having never done a Mid-South, an actual March Mid-South, and I had always sort of resonated with the vibe and what they had put out there. But then when they put out the series of Mega Mid-South videos, which is fantastic, you can go watch it on YouTube. The media team at Mid-South is incredible. But yeah, they put that out last year, and they had a Grand Depart in, I believe, September. That is, if people don't know, it is a collection of the perimeter of all of the Mid-South routes that they've done over the past, I don't know, decade plus. And it amounts to about 300.9 miles.
Yes. So Bobby invited me to that. He said, come out to the Grand Depart last September. That wasn't in the cards. But since then, Mid-South has meant a lot to me, and going to the ride. I mean, I knew it was inevitable that I was going to do the Mega. I had a plan to do it 1 week prior to Unbound. Prior to Mid-South. I was going to do it the Saturday prior.
Of this year.
This year. But then I looked at a calendar and said, oh, wait, that's my daughter's 5th birthday. I'm going to be home and be a good dad.
I don't know. The toss-up between those two things, it's pretty much
go for an all-day bike ride and live out all the highs and lows of that, or spend a day with your daughter. So
there you go.
Was home, was in Vermont, had a great birthday, and then I drove our van to Oklahoma. My family, my wife, who is also a racer, and our 2 kids flew in on Thursday. We set up shop with Untapped and stayed in the Airbnb with Untapped, which is a sports nutrition company that I co-own.
Tell us a little bit about Untapped, Ted. What's it about?
This story is great. This has so many like divergent detours. Maple syrup is pulsing through my body. I probably have equal portions maple syrup and blood in my body. So being a New Englander and loving maple syrup, it was early on. In my European career, road race career, that I said maple syrup is better than maltodextrin and brown rice syrup and all these other flavored supplemented things. Let's just use maple syrup. So the short story is we use maple syrup as sports nutrition. Check us out at untapped.cc. Yeah, it's Untapped's first time there to Mid-South. It's my, I think, 5th go at Mid-South.
Have you won actual Mid-South proper?
I've been as high as 2nd place.
To Payson? Payson's won a few.
Yeah. My first time, it was Payson, Drew Dillman, and I going to the line together, and gosh darn it, Payson beat me. Alas. So it was funny because on the drive, it was probably Tuesday. So 3 days before the event, I had a meeting with someone who happened to live in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Independent of the race. It was a different thing. It was somebody who was starting a sports nutrition company and wanted to pick my brain, and he lives in Oklahoma. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, oh, watch out. It's going to be windy on Friday. And I was like, all right, it's the Midwest. It's going to be windy in the spring. I'm not.
Yeah.
It is amazing how far out they forecasted this wind, and it is amazing how ridiculously strong the wind is. So, okay, blah, blah, blah. Get out, set up shop, do the expo on Friday, and I go in the morning and pick up my number with the intention of going back to Untapped and spend time in the afternoon. The expo is a big deal, you know. I mean, you have 4,000 people going through and picking up their number and being part of the expo, and that's just half the party and festival. And Untapped calls me early in the afternoon and says, "Don't bother coming. The expo's on lockdown. It's windy. tents are being flipped over, porta potties are blowing down. So I stay at our Airbnb, and then it was fairly soon thereafter that there was the rumor of wildfire, and then there is the truth in confirmation of wildfire. And I mean, it's not a terribly forested region. There are forests, but it's a lot of prairie and grass and just super dry stuff that amounts to kindling. And
Yeah.
so it was gonna burn. It was gonna burn quick. We turn on the news and you watch the firefighters trying to fight fire, and when you're spraying a hose at, I'm making up a number, I have no idea, 250 psi into a 70-mile-an-hour wind, like
Yeah.
you're it's a moot point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so Friday ended up being a very chaotic day. People not knowing what's happening. Bobby saying the race is on, or infamously says the race is on until it's not.
Right.
And ultimately, sometime around midnight, they cancel the race. Like, my wife and I went to bed saying, okay, we're sort of quasi intending to race. Like, if there's a race that's on, we'll probably line up for it.
Sure.
Which involve, there's a lot of moving parts there. It's like we're anticipating our babysitter who lives in town to come over at 6:30 in the morning, even though she's a student at the OSU, Oklahoma State University,
Sure.
and she had orders from the school to evacuate. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
not like we're going to be texting her being like, well, I know they said to evacuate, but you got to come over at 6:30 in the morning. We're like, these cards are being played, and however they land is what we're going to do. We'll figure it
Right.
out on the fly.
And just for context, just so people have an idea, I know you mentioned it there, but basically there was this massive weather system that moved across the United States. It affected not just Oklahoma, but a number of states. Unfortunately, like Ted said, the high winds there, they were up to 70, 80, I think a little bit higher in some places. And through a combination of wildfires and just the effects of the wind, I think 35 people ended up losing their lives. I know that in Oklahoma itself, Bobby spoke to about 100 homes being lost. So it was, this is, and this is a question that I think we'll get onto in a little bit, but, it was a weather event that, yes, it was predicted, but the effects of which I think no one really, really fully understood how significant it was going to be. And I mean, to that effect, I mean, you spoke to it a little bit in saying that, infamously Bobby put out a video that he was like, the race is on until it isn't on. And I think he even said on a live stream, it's public, so no worries, but on a live stream when he was waiting for you and Chase to come across the line, that he was a little embarrassed about that because whatever. But I think, I know Bobby, and I think a lot of people know Bobby pretty well and know that he has the best intentions in mind. And I was sick as a dog this whole past weekend, just watching this stuff from my bed. And I think what I thought about when I was watching all of this happen was, I wrote the story on the site about Mega Mid South, which we will get to, folks. But
Yeah.
I wrote the story on the site last year, and I really got to sit down and get, a nice feel of Bobby and Crystal and the whole team at Midsouth. And I think what people should remember is that, Bobby and the rest of the team have worked for years to get this event in Stillwater and to get the community there to band around it. And it means, and through that effort, it means so much, not just from an emotional perspective, but also, materially from an economic perspective. Like, they make their boon through thousands upon thousands of people descending upon what is a very small city in the Midwest. And they plan a lot of things around that. So I think, yes, they made the right call in terms of calling off the race on Saturday, but there are a lot of pressures that I think people should be cognizant of on some level, that Bobby is dealing with in terms of his responsibility or his feeling of responsibility, I think, to people in that community, and doing right by them and making sure that all of the things that essentially they plan their entire fiscal year around are not ruined, just by making a quick call. And so I think, there hasn't been really much pushback, I think, with regards to how the situation was dealt with. And I think they dealt with it really well. But that's just something that I wanted to mention in terms of unprecedented weather events and decision making with regards to races and economics it's a tough call. So it's something to be cognizant of. So, but yeah, sorry, continue.
Very well said. So it was with great apprehension and not knowing the right call. It didn't feel like there was going to be a right call until ultimately, it was canceled and people said, great.
Yeah.
Basically wake up Saturday and it's a clear, beautiful day because we're not abutting mountains. Like once it's still windy, so the air clears out super quickly and the fires are they're certainly quelled in that area or they burned through.
Right.
And then it was independent of all of those things going on.
Yeah.
Once I realized that I was going to be home for my daughter's birthday, I said, okay, I'll go after the FKT on Sunday. And the weather looks clear from it's not going to be a muddy standpoint. It's going to be a nice, beautiful, sunny day on Sunday. And then I wanted to make sure the optics were right for that too, right? I didn't want to go out and celebrate myself and be self-aggrandizing saying, okay, there's been this travesty, but here I am. I'm going to go for a bike ride and really enjoy this area.
Yeah. But so what? You're hanging out at Stone Cloud with Bobby, and you're like, you know what? I intended to do the Mega Mid South at some point. I'm here. Yeah. The weather is fine. The winds have shifted. The AQI is no longer dangerous.
Yeah.
Let me go out and do this thing and raise some money for charity for the sake of making a negative into a positive. I imagine that's what you're kind of
basically saying. Yeah. I mean, as I'm working through the conversations of that morning at home with Untapped, with my wife, hey, logistically, it's still going to make sense. Laura and the family fly home on Sunday. I can go after this pursuit. I have a flight home on Tuesday. I run it by Bobby and his team. And we realized, I mean, at that point, he has started his fundraising for the United Way of Payne County. I thought, shoot, the ducks are lining up in a row to make this a positive thing. This is totally coincidentally, if you look at my shirt, this is the dump truck full of awesome.
Okay. Very dad-esque shirt, I think.
This is my 2-year-old son this morning came downstairs and he's like, you have a dump truck on your shirt. I said, Hayden, I love you. He said, Dad, I love your truck. He's a big truck lover, as are many 2-year-olds. So I have done a whole handful of bike rides, big, long sufferfests that I turn into benevolent causes and fundraisers. So the first one of these was a green shirt to celebrate the Green Mountain State when I rode the 200 on 100 with my friend Tim Johnson and our friend Ryan Kelly. Tim Johnson was a pro cyclist at the time. I was a pro cyclist at the time. And our very amateur friend Ryan Kelly joined us. And over the course of this, 12-hour, 200-mile ride, he gets to the end and he said, I feel like I've been run over by a dump truck full of awesome. He created a video in, I think, 2013 of this. And I don't want to say 2013 precedes YouTube, but as a testament to what the state of affairs is, we published it on Vimeo and got 35,000 views in 2013.
Right.
Made these shirts and ended up selling something like $8,000 of profit from the shirts that we ended up giving to food banks across the state of Vermont because it was right in the aftermath of Hurricane Irene.
Oh, wow.
Vermont got devastated. And it was the same thing. It's like, we're going to do this really fun ride. At this point, it was probably, 8 months later after Hurricane Irene. Okay. So it turned into a really fun, self-fulfilling thing and then also benevolent. Same thing. This is the 200 not on 100. We rode a different route. This, we said it sold another $5,000 of these blue shirts and made the donation to Colorado because in about 2014 or 15, they were suffering the effects of some wildfires.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So to that point, then let me ask you a question that I had later, but I think works quite well now. I think you said something either on an Instagram comment within the posting of the Midsouth cancellation, which is, good call. But then you said something about, unfortunately, this is the new normal. I think within, the greater context of everything that all of our bike events and our jobs and our day-to-day lives exist in, like, obviously there's a lot going on in the US right now that we don't necessarily need to touch on here, but environmentally, like, the effects of these things are only getting worse. And I feel like when you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you said, this is the new normal, and you're speaking about making negatives into positives and turning bike rides into benevolent causes that ultimately can help people. What role do you see yourself playing in that regard? Are you speaking with regard to this is the new normal to that environmental change and how these things will affect things? Because I mean, even last year we saw a number of prominent gravel races, whether they were bikepacking ultras or gravel events, canceled by wildfires or significant weather events. So is that kind of what you were speaking to a certain degree? And how do you see your role in affecting that in a positive way, moving forward?
I feel like politics are is it the third rail? Is that what they call it? It's like I try very hard not to touch politics, and I'm going to steer clear of it pretty well here.
Okay.
It seems like the once in every 100-year storms are happening much more frequently than every century.
Yes.
Um,
We've had a few just in the last few years. So
yeah, and so those are the new normals that to which I referred in that comment. It seems like there are crazy weather events all the time, and so being ready to pivot as a result of a wildfire or smoke or AQI or crazy floods, whatever it is, it seems like that is something to which we need to be accustomed. I mean, I often think, like, I'm glad that I'm a professional cyclist, because in general, if the world's warming, then warm weather makes for good bike riding. As opposed to being a professional skier,
right.
where glaciers are gone and ski season's terrible.
Right.
But then I mean, I realize the new normal means a little bit of everything. I'm looking at my buddy Chris Davenport, who's skiing in Japan, and the Japanese snow system this year was out of control. And our winter here in Vermont was the best winter we've had in a long time. So,
oh, nice.
From a good snow perspective.
Okay.
So yeah, it was basically like it seems like these weather events are having more frequently. I don't know how to prepare for it, but let's be prepared to be prepared.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the point, I've done another one. It was right after I had a pulmonary embolism, so I couldn't compete. And I went out to our friend Jess Sarah's ride, Last Best Ride, great gravel event in Montana. And I started dead last, I think 15-minute buffer, and I was raising $1. I said I'd raise $1 for every person I pass. And over the course of that, I didn't pass 10,000 people, but I helped raise $10,000 for her very cool, impressive scholarship fund there at the Last Best Ride.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it reminds me of my friend Will Dugan, who was once upon a time professional cyclist, and he runs a thing called Project Super Training in Boulder. And basically it's this idea that, look, we love riding bikes, and often the pursuit of a big, long, crazy bike ride seems self-fulfilling and a little bit selfish. I mean, like, operate your own bubble and don't try to intrude other people, but like, let's just do it for ourselves. Whereas what he's doing with Super Training is making all these big, crazy rides into fundraisers. And I know it was difficult business to get off the ground, and I don't know the current state of it. I think he still does a couple of Project Super Training group rides, and he makes it like, hey, it's a $5 show up and ride, and we're going to make a donation with these funds. It's that sort of idea. It's like, I'm going to do this ride. How can I make it a good thing for more than just me?
Right.
So that was the pursuit, right? I mean, like, I wanted to do the route. I want to do the Mega Mid South. Right now I'm signed up for Unbound XL, so it seems like a great way to get some crazy training in. I don't know how you train for a 350-mile ride besides doing big, dumb rides like this.
Yeah.
So there I am at Stone Cloud on Saturday afternoon, drinking a couple beers with Bobby, and I say, hey, I'm going to launch this thing. And he's like, come up on stage, because yes, truth be told, Bobby would like nothing more than to be a rock star. And so it is a music festival, and he's thrilled to have all these great bands. It is just worlds colliding, his music
Yeah.
love and his cycling love.
Right.
And yeah, immediately, I mean, I literally left. I got off the stage and somebody gave me $20, and I said, "Hey, here's my Venmo. I am Ted King on Venmo." And I say that because I'm fundraising throughout the week. And money starts pouring in, and it gets on social media and a whole bunch of views. And so at this point, I think I'm just shy of $6,000 raised for, again, the United Way of Payne County. And I've said it a few times, I love their byline. It is confronting the greatest challenges to our community and figuring out a way to overcome them. I mean, this is a massive challenge that the community is facing right now. So yeah, let's go through the literal portions. Get the family packed up, wake up on Sunday morning at 4:30 a.m. with the intention of riding at 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, who's going to get on a plane, I got up super early I wanted to get the route done early because you have to do a little bit of homework to figure out what stops you're going to make. It's a great route because you're always near towns, but then if you're actually going for an FKT, you want to hit stores that are open instead of detouring off course, obviously.
You're never more, and this is part of the media that they have is on the site, is you're never more than 30 miles away from a resupply, I believe. But as anybody will, as anybody who's been in Oklahoma will know, like not all of them are are corporate entities. Some of them are mom and pop shops, so they're not necessarily open 24 hours a day. So like you said, it does take a bit of planning to figure that out.
Indeed. And an aside, if you notice the pile of clothes behind me, I got home last night.
And and you dropped your kids off this morning.
Dropped my kids off at school, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So it's at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm getting my family out the door, that my wife says, "Oh, did you know that Chase Wark is doing the route? He's doing an FKT attempt also. He's starting at 6:30." And I was like, honestly, I was a little bit frustrated because that was part of the reason I didn't want to publicize it.
Right.
Because I figured a bunch of people would, if I did it like first thing on Saturday morning, as a result of all these bike racers suddenly having no race on Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them be like, "Oh, let's all do like a grand apart on Sunday."
Yeah.
And I don't know, I kind of wanted to selfishly go for the FKT solo.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, you know what? This makes for a really good incentive to ride as hard as I can over the course of 300 miles. And
so Chase going for the FKT separate of you was not something that you collaborated on. It was like he had either heard about you doing it or come up with it of his own accord and decided to do it. He left, maybe an hour after you, or not even.
Yeah, his intention was to leave a half hour after me, which actually made me bonkers because he's so small and arrow. He wears arrow socks, he has a rear disc wheel, and he has arrow bars.
Yeah.
And I was going with just my straight up gravel bike. And I'm like, man, I mean, over the course of a mile, the difference between arrow setup and not is nothing. The difference between arrow and not over 300 miles is monumental.
Especially just for the folks at home, especially for anyone who hasn't ridden out there in Oklahoma, like a lot of those roads are just straight. And, provided that the conditions are with you in terms of it's not super muddy, like you're going to go pretty fast if you're going in a straight line and you have the kind of power available to you that Ted and Chase do. So you add on aero elements to that, and it really does make a significant difference, because some of these gravel courses are pretty rough and tumble. So I don't think aero makes a ton of sense. But yeah, I think out there makes a big difference.
It makes a world of difference. So I guess he sent me a message on Saturday night that I didn't see. "Hey, Ted, I just saw your FKT announcement. I've been planning to do the route on Sunday too before my baby comes." I think his wife is like 37 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
"Since I don't know how the rest of the season will go with the fires and the race cancellation, I didn't want to bug Bobby, but I still want to do it and try to raise $10,000. I want to have fun." I said, "Want to have a fun competition and see if we can raise more or go faster. I'm going to start 30 minutes after you." Yeah, I mean it made for a good friendly competition. It made for me. I mean, it quickly became clear that I was going to get the FKT with huge respect to Nick Bennett, who had set the precedent the previous year.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, I can get this FKT. And now my biggest fear was Chase catching me,
Right.
because then I don't get anything. I wouldn't, at least if I finish ahead of them, then I can get the FKT for a period of time, which is how it shook out.
Right.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, at one point, Bobby, so, Bobby and his team are out there collecting media and shooting video. And
Right.
I asked Bobby at one point, I'm like, hey, how's Chase looking? And he gave me a very serious look. And he's like, oh, he's good. And I was just like, oh, darn it.
So, question for you though.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wrote a feature on the Mega Mid South last year when I did it in September. Most people, there was one guy that kind of did it the way that you did it. He's not you or a professional rider per se. He was honestly just a random guy from Texas that like didn't really stick around before or after, but he just rode straight through. He technically had the first FKT, but yeah, I think he did it in, I forget the time, but there was really only a handful of individuals that did it as such. Most people either bike packed it or kind of credit card toured it, in the sense that like, like I said, you're never more than 30 miles away from a resupply. You could not take bike packing stuff and just stay in a hotel. There's plenty of options at small towns in between. But to my knowledge, you had not completed over 250 mile single day ride prior to this. So when you were looking at the course, what made you think, or what made you strive toward that goal and being like, well, I could just do this in one go?
I did the first ever VTXL.
Okay.
Which is it's very similar. So the 200 on 100 is the 200-mile route on Route 100 that goes the whole length of the state of Vermont.
Right.
And then
a very long state, not a very wide state.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tall state. Right. And then at some point I become connected with Joe Cruz, who lives in this general region. And I was like, hey, Joe, do you know of a 200 on 100 that's on dirt? And he kind of dismisses it. He's like, no, not really. But then he reached out probably a week later and he's like, but I've crafted this. And he created
that sounds like
Joe. It was so Joe. And that is a 315-mile ride, the length of Vermont, on something like 93% dirt. It's a beautiful ride. And I did that, I think, right in the smack heart of COVID.
Okay.
That was like a 22-hour push. So my point is, I've ridden that kind of distance. I've done a single 300-mile ride.
Just one though.
Just one. Okay. Well, yeah, and then I did the VTXL over the course of 4.5 days.
Okay.
Since the initial 1-day push, and I was like, I have no idea how I did it. But okay, knowing that the topography of Oklahoma, albeit it is not flat, but it's not massive climbs. Yeah, it's just a series of
hills,
550-foot hills.
Yep.
And then also I did the race around Rwanda bike packing race about a month prior. I was like,
which you won. Congratulations.
Thank you. I knew I had it in me to go decently speedy, basically not take a sleeping kit. And yeah, went for a wicked long bike ride. I mean, my summarizing notes are, it was insanely cold in the morning.
Yep.
The sun rises at 7:30. And I tried, you're trying to dress. I think it was probably 20. I saw as low as 25 degrees for a good portion of the first 2.5 or 3 hours. And I'm dressed in such a way that I also need to anticipate it being 60 degrees and not carrying a lot of clothes throughout the day.
Right.
So freezing in the morning, getting to a great rhythm, sun rising in the Midwest is just, it's spectacular. I mean, it's an easy area to dismiss if you live in other parts of the country, the Midwest, whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It really is. Yeah,
and the whole route is beautiful. Like,
I think I
Yeah.
think when I did it, I keep referencing it, but people can go check out the feature. But it's like, it is distinctly beautiful in not just the dirt roads, but there are a few sections of that ride that dip into different parts of Oklahoma that really are distinctly beautiful, and you understand why Bobby is so passionate about that portion of the country. And yeah, it really is a beautiful ride.
Yeah. And anybody can take it on. I mean, there are some sections that keep you on your toes, but it's not a technically challenging route.
No.
Yeah, no climb is going to take you more than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's totally achievable, and it's a blast. I talked to somebody the subsequent night, because Bobby is just, that is a community. The people in Stillwater ride bikes, and I was hanging out at a party that evening, and I was talking to some folks who, they bike packed it during the Grand Depart. They did it over 3 days.
Yep. And
just love it over a day, love it over 3 days. Anybody can take it on. Riding. I'm trying to document it also, because I've sort of self-shoot and self-edit videos, and this seems like a really fun one to create. So I'm shooting and commentating, and then Bobby and his team come out, and time is just sort of a time warp over the course of this sort of effort. Things are largely, from like an FKT standpoint, things are largely going okay. I talked to a physician about this. I stopped a whole bunch during those freezing cold hours to pee. And I did pee off the bike. I mean, like, I'm trying to be quick about it, and I'm realizing I'm talking about bodily function, so I apologize. But okay, we're at this point in our conversation. It was, as confirmed by this physician, I'm so cold that your body wants to shunt water. It wants to get rid of water, because otherwise you're just wasting your body heat by warming it. Like,
okay.
I couldn't believe, I think I peed 4 times in 3 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, I opt for pretty, not that long, but I love a good 7-hour Saturday ride. And sometimes I go almost entirely without peeing.
Exactly.
I don't know what.
Well, yeah. And then I'm like, shoot, am I dehydrating myself because I'm so dang cold? Anyway, so that was not advantageous. Okay, how long does it take to pee? A couple minutes. But I'm like, I know Chase is chasing me. I got to be quick. Coming out of gas stations, within the next like 2 minutes, I was stopped at trains as like I'm watching the thing go down. So thinking, shoot, if I had been 30 seconds faster out of that gas station, I wouldn't be stopped here by this train.
Yeah, you were stopped by trains, according to Bobby via the Instagram, at least once for like 12 minutes, right?
He did say between the two, it's 12 minutes. I had to go back and look at the math, because again, you're in a time warp. Like, I looked at my Strava. It was not 12 minutes.
But that's what we can lie, Ted. I gave you an out.
Exactly. We can pretend it's 12 minutes.
We can pretend it's 12 minutes.
It was multiple minutes shy of the difference between what Chase beat me by. So I can't completely blame the train. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, get through the day. I mean, as the sun's starting to set, I'm like, I got really nervous for knowing how cold and miserable it was 12 hours prior.
Yeah.
And the forecast had changed. It was pretty cool all throughout the day. It was sunny and beautiful and not terribly windy, given that when it's windy in this area, like the day prior, obviously the fire day, the day after, it was supposed to be epically windy.
Yeah.
This was a relatively calm day. Everything's good. And then, we get into the night again, and it was freezing, and I was just kind of miserable. But no, at that point that I'm going to take the FKT.
Sorry, so your FKT time was what exactly?
17 hours and 18 minutes.
You started, if I'm not mistaken, at 5 a.m. on Sunday.
Started at 6 a.m., 6:03.
So you're getting well into the night into Monday.
So I finished I did it all within one day. I did it from from 6:03 a.m. Until 11:24 p.m.
So as the sun goes down on Sunday, this is when it starts to get really quite cold again.
It's like, it's not an immediate cold as it was that morning, but it's like it's definitely chilly, and so I
Yep.
try to prevent getting cold in the first place. Put my warm clothes on again, and then because you just have these nonstop dips, it's like you're warm at the top of the hill, and you get
Yep.
down the bottom of the hill, and you're freezing, and then
Yeah.
warm and freezing, and warm and freezing.
Yeah.
Not insurmountable, but yeah, it's like it's it's cold. So then I roll into Stillwater, finish in front of District, which is the party place. I'm expecting 5 people there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Bobby, when I call him the Pied Piper. Like,
He really
people
is.
will come out. And so I bet there are 25 people, 30 people.
Yeah.
It's live streaming it, and he just creates a party. I mean, I have created a decent tolerance for alcohol. So when he splashes me in champagne and I take a sip, like I felt it immediately. It's so dehydrated, so smoked.
Yeah.
Uh, put a jacket on immediately. I'm freezing, so I'm hanging out there for
Right.
a bit, but then I eventually go inside District, knowing that Chase is going to roll into town shortly thereafter, and at what do you say, 11:58 p.m. Chase crossed the finish line, and I was hoping in my heart of hearts that I would have had it for the whole day, so to speak,
Yeah.
like, so that he wouldn't take it till Monday. But no,
Yeah.
he started an hour after me, and he took the FKT by about 20 minutes. So therefore, I had it for 40 minutes.
Okay. Just another potential plug for Untapped, but what were you? The gas stations in Oklahoma have some, as people can see again on the feature there. At the first gas station you go to in Kearney, there are these fantastic lollipops that have crickets in them. So
Oh,
there are
nice.
some interesting things to be eaten in the Oklahoma gas stations, but I assume you consumed absolutely nothing but Untapped for the entire.
If it were, yeah, in all of my general bike races, I go in as long as there's no refueling. Like at the side of the if you can pick up the stuff that you anticipate. I mean, my point is I race exclusively on Untapped, and it
Okay.
works great. We have a great lineup
Yeah.
of products. Yeah, when I go into a gas station, then I'm going to need to get some other stuff. So I haven't done the math, but I could do it real quick. I probably had about almost 3,000 calories of Untapped to start with.
Okay.
And then my stops were certainly gas station inspired. I generally stick to sweets as opposed to the salty variety of food. I just sort of think, okay, I need carbohydrates and I need a lot of them.
Right.
Sort of do the candy bar routine.
Which
There's so many-
candy bar? I know that
Um,
Lachlan is a big Payday guy. I love a Payday myself.
I had a Payday. I had a whatchamacallit.
Okay.
I had Snickers are of course popular, but you know what I really like is the almond flavor Snickers.
I've never had that.
Highly recommend it. It's a totally different variety than a standard Snickers. That's very good.
Okay.
Another realization, so many people like gummy bears, and gummy
Yeah.
bears are delicious.
Yep.
But man, oh man, like you're just chewing and chewing and chewing. I mean, I was deep into chewing for like 20 minutes that I thought, why the heck, what a terrible contraption for riding a bike, this gummy bear.
Yeah.
I hate to plug the giant that is Gatorade, but yeah, I drink a bunch of Gatorade, figure electrolytes and sugar.
Yep.
Had one Red Bull.
You had a Red Bull.
I did.
Okay.
Because I don't.
Not sponsored by Red Bull.
No, not sponsored. I don't know. I wanted a caffeine. Someone said, why didn't you drink a Coke? And in general, Coke's pretty big. I mean, I could chug it, but then I'm going to be burping for a while, and I could pour it in a bottle, but then with the effervescence, it's going to be like bubbling out of the bottle. So, those things. What else? That's a decent summary of my nutrition strategy.
Okay. So larger scale question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 years ago, either last year or 2 years ago, you attempted Unbound XL. You didn't do it because of a mechanical, if I'm not mistaken. And then you had, I know that there was some potentially mechanical, but also you were going to do the Tour Divide shortly after and wanted to make sure that you were as ready for that as possible. Unfortunately, on the Tour Divide run, you succumb to a bout of rhabdomyalgia, which was unfortunate. It seemed at the time, as someone looking 40,000, 50,000 feet away, that was kind of the direction that you were going in terms of chasing these larger rides and doing sort of, I guess you could call it ultra bike packing stuff, even though there's not a bike packing element to how you were doing Unbound XL. But after the Tour Divide, maybe it seemed like you snapped back to the shorter, faster gravel discipline. Is this a potential return to the longer stuff? Where are you on that? How do you feel? ETC, am I making stuff up? Go ahead.
No, great questions. Thank you for observing and giving it some thought. So let's go through literally Unbound XL 2023.
Yeah.
I went after that because I had done 5 traditional Unbounds.
Yep.
Whereupon I'm awarded the Chalice. You get 1,000-mile club, which like that was my pursuit. After I'd done 2 or 3 of them, I'm like, yeah, let's try this.
And you've won twice or once?
I've won Unbound 2 times.
2 times. Okay.
And so yeah, I went after the XL, and then I didn't have a mechanical, but it was a muddy year, and so
it
after
was the mud year, the recent mud year.
It was heinous. Like we were tromping through the woods, through some field. After tromping and tromping and tromping, there was one particular 6 or 7 mile section of purely walking, and I was with 2 other people, and it was just it kind of became so bad that it was funny.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is dumb. And then I had stepped into a hole and did one of those. I didn't hyperextend my knee, but my knee sort of snapped back and it hurt real bad. And yeah, knowing a slightly bigger picture, my plan was to go from there and then literally go straight to Canada and take an attempt at the Tour Divide, which has both of which, the XL or the Tour Divide, have a ton of planning to go into them, but especially Tour Divide.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? This is just kind of dumb. I don't feel like walking for another 20 miles.
Yeah.
I'll give this a go another time. And then, yeah, I've done a handful of true bike packing things like Arkansas High Country.
Yep.
VTXL over the course of 4 days involved actual camping. I've done some winter bike packing, like a week in northern Canada. So I often say you're a bike packing rookie or a bike packing novice until you've done about 20 of them. Like you just are always learning. And even when you've done 20, you're still learning. What I've found is I get very humbled at Tour Divide. I like the sort of 5 day or less adventures. I like the 1 day adventures because I also like sleeping in beds. I like Rwanda because the way that is formatted, like side of the road camping just doesn't exist. So they actually encourage you to sleep in hotels.
Okay. You're not a big bivvy guy though.
I have bivvies and I sleep in bivvies, but I'm given the option, I will probably sleep in a indoor.
Plus you're fast enough to like kind of cut a lot of routes down pretty short to where you don't need to bivvy.
Exactly. It's not quite 6 in one, half dozen the other. It's 6 in one and 8 in the other, and I'm leaning towards sleeping indoors.
Yeah.
But then I also like, and what I said about Rwanda and about all bike packing is like I like being taken out of my comfort zone, and I feel like that's what bike packing is. Like, the general amenities of life that were provided in everyday living makes for very easy day to day, and it's nice to shake that up every once in a while and be like, how do you handle adversity? Because I mean, adversity is sleeping on the side of the road. Come on, like literally through this route, I'm going through burn zones and seeing houses that have been burned to their foundations.
Right.
So it's a good perspective check.
Okay.
Anyway, then in 2024, I had this sort of, I had a really fun season last year. I got a coach, and I treated my gravel pursuit of gravel racing like I was 10 years younger, and
Mhm.
I made it a whole thing and a fun video series with Cannondale. And last year I was 41 years old racing against people who are literally half my age, and I wanted to see what I could achieve. So I mean, my racing is a little all over the map. Yes, I was going to do the Mid-South 100
Mhm.
and then go after the FKT.
Yeah.
Do bike packing as much as I want to do another hellbent gravel race.
Yeah. Okay. With that in mind, I think you brought up an interesting point about, or there was some dots connected there about you're quick enough to, as you said, not necessarily 6, half dozen, one, but 8 towards sleeping indoors. But to that end, like I said, this route was presented to, I think, the world as sort of a bike packing route. You did it in one day. I think there's often this perception that if you're going very quick doing anything, that you're missing out on stuff and you're not seeing everything that you should be seeing and all this other stuff. But as someone that definitely is nowhere near as quick as you are, but maybe a little bit faster than the average individual, I get that sentiment sometimes from some of my friends. Do you think, or is there an element of this route that you experienced in passing or while doing this FKT attempt that you said, you know what, I need to maybe come back and do this a little bit slower, do this across maybe multiple days, or split it in half, or whatever the case is? And I mean, what was your general experience of the route? And like, obviously you've done a bunch of Mid-Souths and this combines a lot of them. So yeah, what elements of the route resonated with you, and how is it, how does your experience change, and what do you feel is distinct about the way in which you tend to do bike packing routes?
Near the finish, Bobby's in the car and he asked me, "What's your favorite part?" And
Yeah.
I struggled with it because like it's such a blur.
Yeah.
It's kind of homogenous in that it's a lot of the same.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in certainly not a negative way. It's like it's just a lot of this in
Yeah.
cool hills and beautiful hills, and maybe you're in a open field, and maybe you're in a wooded area, and maybe the terra firma is hard packed gravel, or maybe it's loose gravel, or maybe it's one of the chunky sections that he particularly loves. But it is a lot of the same.
Yeah.
So I loved it over the 300 miles.
Hmm.
But I mean, I struggled to answer it. I'm like, well, actually, okay, truth be told, my favorite part is sunrise. Like to watch the sunrise, as we've already talked about, is stunning, or to watch the sunset is stunning. I don't currently feel compelled to go back and pursue it over multiple days. It was fun talking to folks who did it as the Grand Depart, and part of the reason that this person in particular who I was talking to said he did it over 3 days is it was like between 98 and 103 degrees through most of the route. So he's like, well, I largely didn't ride during the day, and then he would ride at the shoulder ends of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it just worked out terrifically well. I mean, it's almost as though I would argue that by going a little bit faster, okay, I'm pretty observant. I've got good senses. I can see, hear, and touch. I get to see more over the course of the day, and then I can still rush home and see my family and go to the
Yeah.
party that night. And my wife is awesome and a huge supporter of these things that I do,
Right.
and she also is happy when I come home.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's like my calendar is a little bit all over the place. It's fun to fit in so many different things, and to be
Yeah.
able to fit this in when I did and how I did, I don't think I would change it. And then,
Okay.
so yeah, also over the course of, it was somewhere late afternoon Sunday that I knew it was going to be a pretty tight race, so to speak, for the FKT. And then I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Let's make this the fundraising competition. So I go to social media and say, hey, I'm already doing well in fundraising, but like, get after me and help support me, because I know Chase is doing the same. I think at this point we are north of $10,000 between the two of us raised, and through continued projects like this, I mean, just getting the word out, it's neat to see the change that we can make. At some point, there's going to be a fastest time, and maybe not. But it's in human nature to go faster.
I know that you said you don't necessarily feel compelled to go back, and there were some frustrations with regards to Chase starting 30 minutes after you.
Yeah.
Do you think you could go back and do it faster? Do you have it within you to do that? Like without putting an arrow wheel, which I think is a crime against God, but
can I use arrow bars?
But yeah.
Can I use arrow bars or no?
I don't know. Do you want to? Like, I know everybody has their opinions about that.
Like, okay, as much as they are, I call it an effrontery to style. It just looks terrible. Like they're unequivocally faster on a course like this. And late in the ride, when you're like sore and been kind of in the same static position, for sure it would be more comfortable to drop down and have an alternative position.
Yeah.
So without a doubt, I could go back tomorrow on tired legs and probably go faster
with arrow bars.
Yeah. But right, am I compelled to go back and get myself the FKT again? Currently, no. Okay. But I've often said that about many events, and then you will find me on a start line for that same event somewhere in the future.
We'll link any fundraising efforts down in the show notes. People can check that out. Like Ted has mentioned a few times, if you'll mention it one more time, the cause that Bobby was raising for the Wildfire Relief Fund was one with Payne County, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the United Way of Payne County, which is confronting our community's biggest challenges and helping to overcome them. Okay. So the way Bobby was doing it is on their website on midsouthgravel.com. It's actually very smart. Instead of making just a generic donation, it was donate $10. So it was $10 increments. And they've raised a heck of a lot of money there. Untapped, to make another plug, we do maple creamies, which is something the rest of the world would call a maple soft serve or maple ice cream. That's what we often do at events. And instead of selling them or giving them away the day of, we created a fundraiser and raised almost $800. And what Chase and I are doing is basically accepting money to our Venmo. So again, my Venmo is I am Ted King. Mm-hmm. And put a little comment of like wildfire relief, and then I will collect all that money. I am certainly not making a profit. And making a donation that way.
Perfect. To put the first bit potentially last, your bike setup for this for this attempt?
I mean it was my bike set up as if I were racing Mid-South the day prior. So a pretty hell-bent bike racer. It's the all-new Cannondale Super X. Awesome, fast, ultralight race bike. What did I have? I had Zip Firecrest 303 wheels. I had Renee Hurst's new corkscrew 700 by 44, a very fast rolling tire. Mm-hmm. I had Explorer drivetrain. So I had a 48 front met with a 1046 rear. Mm-hmm. Probably the same thing I would do in most gravel races.
You had a 48 front?
Yeah. But especially on a course like that, like downhill, tailwind, like you are hitting the 10 every now and again, which is bonkers.
You spoke to this a few times, but the riding in Oklahoma is distinctly, I would say, torturous, with no disrespect to the good people there, because you climb only for about, like you said, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then you get almost no downhill, and then you're just back to the flats. So I guess the 48 does make sense. But.
Yeah, you like the littler rollers because often you can take the speed and roll up on the other side, but yeah, they are rollers in every sense of the word for sure.
Right. Bag wise?
My buddy Matt Musa runs Moose Packs, a terrific company out of Austin, Texas. So I had their saddlebag. I had their underneath the top tube bag. I had tail fins new on the top of a top tube bag.
Hmm.
I had 2 massive bottles of Untapped. I had my wonderful ASOS cycling kit. I had exposure. I have some exposure lights. So I had the
Yeah.
Toro on the front of my bike and what's the name of it? I had an exposure headlamp. Not a headlamp. It's a bike lamp that I have mounted to my helmet.
Okay.
Apologies for forgetting the name of that.
Yep.
Um,
Your wonderful cask helmet.
Cav.
Apologies.
Cav is there. This is a really cool company, and I want people to check them out. They're a relatively new helmet company that you 3D print your helmet. You take your phone, and you scan your head, and then you send off that file through their app, and then you get a fit kit in the mail to make sure it's fitting perfectly, and then your helmet arrives with your custom colors, and it fits perfectly. It's brilliant this day and age. Like, okay, what is one of the biggest problem touch points from the pandemic and cycling is everybody's over inventoried.
Yeah.
If every helmet is printed to a person's head, 3D printed to that person's head, you're sitting on no inventory.
Yeah.
Like, it's brilliant. And the helmet fits great, looks great. Aero, it's sweet. The Cav happened to be at Midsouth, and we were toying around with I call it a prototype, a yet to be released helmet. They're doing really cool things.
Nice. Last question. Any future plans on big rides? I know you got a race season coming up, but any more FKTs you're going for? Any bike packing trips you're going to do?
Gravel Doom is on my...
I'm going to Gravel Doom, Ted.
Which distance are you going to do?
The Doom. Why would I travel to Arkansas from North Carolina in a Tacoma and not do 400? And I'm doing it single speed. So sounds like you should also do it single speed.
Glutton for punishment. Well, okay. So I haven't said if I'm doing it or not. Well, basically, my plan was to do the 400, which is the Doom.
It's 417 miles with 44,000 feet of gain.
Yeah, in a stunning part of the country. If you have not ridden in Northwest Arkansas, it is beautiful. But then it's like literally 5 days before Sea Otter, which is that is a more prominent.
That is the real kickoff of the Lifetime Grand.
Yeah, that's the beginning of Lifetime. It's a big sponsor gathering, so it's very important that we are there.
Yeah.
What is my point? Oh yeah, so I was gonna fly to Arkansas, do it, and then fly to California, but then looking at a calendar and being like, okay, how long is this actually going to take me? I don't think I can. I literally can't do the 400.
You could do like Dismay or Despair. I think those.
Yeah.
Are the short
So then I was considering doing the 200, which I think puts it back in the realm of possible.
Yeah, you should. It would be great to see you.
It would be great to see you too. So
yeah,
that's on my today's to-do list. Like, what are the logistics to pull that off?
Great. Okay, well, just to close out the conversation for the folks, again, you can donate to. We'll put down the causes in the show notes. And thanks again to Ted for talking to me about his recent Mega Mid South FKT.
Pleasure, Nick. Great talking with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Nick, and of course, thank you, Ted King, for your time. And if you like what you saw in this video and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And if you want to help support everything we do on BIKEPACKING.com, everything on this YouTube channel, you can do so by joining the Bikepacking Collective. The Collective offers a lot of awesome perks, including industry discounts, monthly giveaways, the twice yearly Bikepacking Journal, and now Base Camp. And if you want access to all those, click on the card in the top right corner or also find the link in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, paddle further.